Fighter 3 Ultimate is the longest running game ever. Minecraft is the best-selling video game so far. I think that if Fortnite was a paid game, that Fortnite might be the #1 selling game. But since it's free, that might be why it's not. Super Mario Land is darker than you thought. The world record for blowing into cartridges is 43 cartridges in 20 seconds. The biggest video game collection has a library of over 20,000 games. The PlayStation 2 is the best-selling gaming console of all time. One of the earliest video games was created by a physicist. The longest video game session lasted 138 hours and 34 seconds. The earliest RPG on a console was released in 1982. I do like myself a good RPG, so I'm always down for those. The Pokemon Red and Green were the best-selling Game Boy games. I remember Pokemon Red and Green, and I also had Yellow and Blue. Actually, I never had Green. Couldn't get it in New York for whatever reason. The youngest professional gamer was 11 years old. The first esports tournament was held in the 70s. Grand Theft Auto was supposed to be a racing game. Minecraft's overworld has a surface area of 9,258,235 times larger than the Earth. People who play video games are more likely to be lucid dreamers than those who don't. Studies have shown that playing Tetris can curb sex, drug, and food cravings. I would say playing video games in general has that impact. The fog in Silent Hill wasn't entirely a design choice. A man reached level 90 in World of Warcraft. Without leaving the starting zone ever. That's because you can kind of just queue for dungeons these days and not even, go anywhere. The Game Boy was the first video game console played in space. And now they're gonna have a few descriptions here, but we're gonna find some more video game facts instead. So, let's see what we can find, shall we? The Sega Dreamcast was the first console to implement online play over a phone line, calling the system SegaNet. The Microsoft Xbox was the first video game system to provide full support for HDTV. The Popular Science recognized the Sega Dreamcast as one of the most important and innovative products of 1999. The Magnavox Odyssey, released in 1972, contained 40 transistors and no microprocessor. The Pentium 4 microprocessor contains 42 million transistors on the chip itself. The PlayStation 2 was the first system to have graphics capability PlayStation manufacturer Silicon Graphics Inc. SGI developed game hardware technology. When the original Atari football game was first created in 1973, it wasn't released until 1978. It was actually delayed because the game couldn't scroll the screen. Players couldn't move beyond the area shown on the monitor. When the game was finally released, it became the first game to utilize scrolling, a key part of many games to date. The Atari Pong video game console was the #1 selling item for the holiday season in 1975. The first console to have games available in the form of an add-on cartridge was the Fairchild Channel F console, introduced in August of 1976. The PlayStation 2 was the first video game system to use DVD technology. On the original Magnavox Odyssey, players had to keep score themselves because the machine couldn't. The Nintendo GameCube's proprietary disc held 1.5 gigabytes of data, 190 times more than that of an N64 game cartridge. On the market from 1991 till 2004, the SNK Neo Geo AES has tied the Atari 2600 from 1977 to 1990 as the longest supported gaming console in history. The Sega Genesis featured a version of the same Motorola processor that powered the original Apple Macintosh computer. Mattel's Intellivision system, introduced in 1980, featured an add-on called Play Cable, which delivered games by cable TV. Nintendo's Game Boy was the most successful game system ever, with more than 100 million units sold worldwide. The word Atari comes from the ancient Japanese game of Go and means you are about to be engulfed. Technically, it is the word used by a player to inform his opponent that he is about to lose, similar to check in chess. In the 1980s, a service called GameLine allowed users to download games to the Atari 2600 over regular phone lines. It was not a success, but did form part of the foundation for America Online, the world's largest internet service provider. The first color portable video game system was the Atari Lynx, introduced in 1989, and it was priced at $149. Introduced in 1993, the 3DO was the first video game system to be based entirely on CD technology. The Sony PlayStation was originally intended as a CD add-on to the Super Nintendo. When licensing problems and other issues arose, Sony decided to develop the PlayStation as a machine of its own. And now the PlayStation is more successful than Nintendo, so it's pretty interesting how that ends up happening when you really think about it. Sometimes very interesting plot twists emerge as a result that otherwise might not have happened if things went a different direction. South Korea put a ban on Japanese cultural imports following World War II, and it wasn't until 2004 that it was lifted. That didn't mean South Korean gamers didn't get to know Mario. Hyundai Electronics distributed Nintendo's product in South Korea. The NES, for example, was called the Hyundai Comboy, which was superseded by the Super Comboy and the Comboy 64. Batman Arkham Asylum was almost rhythmic. During the early stages of development, Batman Arkham Asylum was prototyped as a rhythmic action game. The second prototype focused on 2D fighting, which would Mario games are named after famous musicians. Most people can see the pattern in Ludwig, Iggy, and Lemmy's names. What you may not know is Super Mario World's fire-breathing Triceratops is named after Reznor, named after Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, who also created the soundtrack for Quake. Scribblenauts almost launched with a strange bug in which a lion would eat itself if bacon was glued to its back. The odd occurrence was found in the late stages of AI finalization. The satisfying ding that rings out when a Fat Man nuke is launched in Fallout 3 is the lunch bell from Bethesda's Softworks' cafeteria. The Fat Man itself is modeled after an actual nuke launcher called the M388 Davy Crockett Tactical Nuclear Recoilless Rifle, which was developed in the 1950s. The voice actor who played Master Chief in every Halo game to date is more famously known as Steve Downes, a radio DJ dating back to the late 1970s. Downes was most recently on Chicago's WDRV The Drive. Core design animator Toby Gard wanted to make an interactive movie starring a male character looking for treasure in Egyptian pyramids. The character was deemed too close to Indiana Jones and was quickly switched to a South American woman named Laura Cruz. Core ended up wanting a UK-friendly name, so Core employees dove into a phone book and settled on the name Croft. Laura Croft. Chinese video game creator Xinghan Chen's name may not ring any bells, but you are likely familiar with his design work on the game's Journey and Flower. Xinghan works under the name Genova Chen. He was inspired by Final Fantasy VII, and took the name of the character Genova when he started working in games. The first video game in space was Tetris. In 1993, Tetris traveled aboard a Soyuz TM-17 rocket to the Mir space station, where it was played by Russian cosmonaut Alexander A. Serebrov. The game was later sold at an auction for $1,220. Ubisoft's long-running and highly successful Assassin's Creed series was originally going to be a Prince of Persia spin-off. The game was called Prince of Persia Assassins, and it told the story of a female assassin tasked with protecting a prince in Jerusalem. After roughly a year of development, Ubisoft rejected the idea as it didn't focus on the prince enough. The game was reworked to the Assassin's Creed we know today. During the 2008 presidential election, Barack Obama purchased ad space in 18 games that ran in 10 states. The Vote for Change billboards were in Burnout Paradise, Skate, Madden, and more that targeted the demographics of ages 18 to 34, which is a really good way to market your presidential campaign, I would say. It's pretty smart. Toward the end of the movie, The Cabin in the Woods, a gallery of monsters is shown for a few seconds, along with two other iconic film monsters. Two of those creatures are from the video game series Left 4 Dead. Eagle-eyed gamers can clearly see a boomer and witch. NBA Jam creator Mark Turmel is a huge Detroit Pistons fan that he rigged this game so the Pistons would have a better shot at beating the then rival Chicago Bulls. In the Game Boy title Final Fantasy Legend 2, the player encountered a group of opium smugglers, but Nintendo's censorship guidelines wouldn't allow that to fly in the US version. Instead of selling opium, the drug dealers were forced to peddle bananas in the back alleys of this world. In the Nintendo 64 game GoldenEye 007, Rare originally intended to include Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, and Sean Connery as playable characters in multiplayer was scrapped prior to release, but the character models for these famous actors were still on the cartridge. In 2005, a group called the Rare Witch Project cracked the game's code and found them. In 2010, the U.S. Air Force created the Condor Cluster, a heterogeneous supercomputer built using off-the-shelf commercial components, including over 1,700 PlayStation 3s. This particular system is about half a petaflop, or capable of about 500 trillion calculations per second. Mark Parnell, the director of high-performance computing at the Air Force Research Laboratory, said Mark Parnell, "In the current time that we can measure it, it's about the 35th or 36th fastest computer in the world. The Condor Cluster cost $2 million to build. A gene and protein that separates your right brain from the left and determines you have 2 eyes is called the Sonic Hedgehog. The gene's symbol is SHH. The name wasn't inspired directly by the game, but a comic book series. A British postdoc named Robert Riddle drew inspiration from a Sonic comic, and his 6-year-old daughter was reading. The gene appropriately has a spiky appearance. With 4,061,129 words spread across 220 chapters, a Super Smash Bros. Fan fiction called The Subspace Emissaries World Conquest is one of the longest works of literature in the English language. The book is written by someone named Christian, who writes under the name Aura Chandler Chris. The longest published novel is Jules Romaine's Men's of Goodwill at 2,070,000 words and 8,000 pages. In 1999, Microsoft's Ed Fries met with the DirectX team to discuss the new idea called DirectX Box, a PC with a hidden Windows operating system that will be marketed like a console machine. The first mock-up of the DirectX Box was a Silver X with a PC board inside. As the project moved through development, Windows was dropped, the console looked changed, and it was eventually renamed Xbox. Numbered Final Fantasy games were Nintendo exclusives until Squaresoft realized the Nintendo 64 wasn't capable of achieving its vision for the next installment in the series. That game was Final Fantasy VII. Due to the storage limitations of cartridges, Square created Final Fantasy VII exclusively for PlayStation. An ad for the game mocked Nintendo's medium, saying, "Someone get the guys who make cartridge games a cigarette and a blindfold." Possibly the greatest game ever made is available only on PlayStation. Good thing if it were available on cartridge, it'd retail for around $1,200. Jesus. In the first Civilization game, Gandhi's aggression rating was the lowest score of 1, meaning he didn't want to make war. However, if a player chose democracy, his aggression dropped 2 points. Instead of falling to -1, the number looped around to 255, the highest aggression rating possible. Democracy turned Gandhi into a nuke-firing titan. Ever wonder where all the people in the Mushroom Kingdom are? In the manual for Super Mario Bros. On the NES, a short story summary says the Koopas turn all of the land's people into blocks, stones, and field horse plants. Think of that the next time you play Super Mario and make Mario jump into a block. That's pretty dreary, isn't it? The UK versions of FIFA 2001 and Gran Turismo 2 shipped with the peculiar idea of scratch and sniff discs. If you scratched FIFA's discs, you would smell the pitch. Rubbing Gran Turismo 2's disc would deliver an authentic pit stop smell. That's interesting. Quite strange. And the last one, comedians Conan O'Brien and Andy Richer visited 343 industries for a spoof skit in an episode of Conan in which they recorded audio for dock workers aboard a spaceship. This audio made it into Halo 4 in a level called Shutdown. You'll need to stand next to 2 specific dock workers for a couple of minutes to trigger their dialogue. as you can see, I have a new setup in the background, so it's pretty cool. Decided to give you guys a little more color. You know, you were staring at my green, sort of green, dreary wall. And I wanted to give you guys a little more, you know, of a colorful background, something nice to look at. So there you go. I hope you like it very much. Thank you for watching, my friends, and I will see you in the next video. I love you all very much.